Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. This week is another kind of action-packed week. The end of 2025 has a lot happening. We are closing out what is considered the Gregorian calendar, which is the modern calendar that we use. We are coming to the end of the zodiacal calendar. We're in kind of the last quarter. Sagittarius season kind of kicks off this final third of this moment. So yeah, we are headed into this kind of last lap. This week, we will see Mercury back in Sagittarius in its final degrees of what was a pretty chaotic retrograde. We're in the post retrograde shadow. But yeah, a lot is going on. We're also dealing with, because Sagittarius is also a mutable sign, we're also dealing with the squares, the mutable squares with Saturn and Neptune. And because of where Mercury is, we kind of have a last goodbye moment with Saturn and Neptune as well. So let's get into what this week entails. Starting off on Monday, we have Mars square Saturn. Malefics getting together is always tricky. I don't really believe in good or bad, but intense, overwhelming, accident prone. Yes, malefic aspects are hard. This is when the planet of order and control and knows, and us having to kind of function within the boundaries of the life that we exist in, Saturn, comes up against Mars that is spicy and angry and aggressive and wants what it wants, especially in Sagittarius. And so we're starting off the week with a level of intensity that might feel like a lot. Know that this is an opportunity to recognize where things are not working, to recognize where we need to move and what boundaries we are functioning in, and also what are hard boundaries and what are soft boundaries. What are our limitations within what we are dealing with? Is it just something that isn't happening because we are not doing it, aka action with Mars, or it is something that's not happening because we're coming up against systemic structures and boundaries and limitations that are not our fault? Um, it is going to very much highlight the way systemic issues and violence impacts us. So I do think we're going to see an uptick in some more violent stuff on kind of the sphere. And I know you're like, how can it get worse? Believe me, it can. Um, so, definitely stay safe, protect yourself and your family. Make wise choices on Monday. I don't like to fearmonger, but be cautious. If you don't have to do anything risky Monday, maybe don't. I would also avoid, especially if you live in a place that has road hazards and bad weather, I would avoid driving if I could. If you have to, just be really cautious and do defensive driving. So yeah, this is going to be an upheaval. It also is going to take a couple of days to clear. So just know that, kind of Sunday leading into Monday, petering off Tuesday, Wednesday, we're still going to feel this kind of tension and this bite. If you haven't recognized the frustrations of your situation and given them a name, this is the day that will happen. Then we head to Wednesday, where Neptune stations direct. This is its final pace through Pisces, where it is going to then enter into Aries in February, early February. So this is kind of our final Neptunian moment. Any spiritual lessons you've been learning since 2011, any insights, any shifts, any changes in creativity, or anything to do with the arts, all of these things are kind of coming to a close in the next few months. So yeah, this is a great time, especially as the station's direct and there's a bit of a lag of a couple days before it actually starts motion again, to really sit with what has happened in the last, 14 years. How have you changed? How have your beliefs changed? How has your connection to others? Do you have a different spiritual practice than you did 14 years ago? How has it developed? These are all really good things to do while we're kind of in a stuck moment with Neptune station. And then on that same day, we have Mercury opposing Uranus before it heads into Sagittarius. And so not only are we looking back, but we're also seeing the ways that the zeitgeist is moving, how that is being hampered or torn apart or not really working. And it kind of ties back and is going to magnify that previous Mars situation that we have, because um, Pisces is sextile those late degrees of where Uranus is. And so that is where Saturn is, and that is where Neptune is. So all of this is interconnected. And so we have this opposition where we can see the change that is needed. We can understand that innovation is a must, but we're not quite to a place where it's functional, and that can feel really frustrating and upsetting and just create this feeling that nothing's ever going to change. And if it is going to change, the shifts that are required seem insurmountable. It's not true. Mercury is a pretty fast moving planet, but feeling stuck. And the last time we had this opposition, it was in Sagittarius and Gemini. And so it did feel as if there was a little more of a promise of the change to come, but coming back to kind of an older aspect, because we've been kind of dealing with this for a couple of years, with this, 7 years with, Mercury going into Scorpio and hitting in opposition with Uranus. It might feel like we're returning to something where something just isn't shifting. Know that it is. We're going to have Uranus back in Gemini in April, I think April 25th, 2026, which will be nice. But know that there are solutions in this moment. Instead of looking at the frustrations as barriers to access and entry, look at these moments as learning. I know, and this might be really annoying for me to say this, and I hate this too, learning opportunities where we can see how things aren't functioning. We can see how innovation, or the lack thereof, or the ways in which things are being innovated is not functional, especially in Taurus when we're thinking about innovation on a large scale. Unfortunately, this kind of 7 year stint has seen a lot of innovation that is unhelpful. Also, Uranus represents medical innovation specifically in a lot of ways. It covers other things, but innovations in medicine or something, and we're kind of seeing, especially in the US, how if it's not profitable, it doesn't get done. And if it is profitable, then the people who would benefit from the innovation don't get access to it. And so a lot of this week is about our lack of access to innovation, our lack of access to what should be moving humanity forward. We're not, the common person does not get to benefit from a lot of the things that are supposed to be benefiting us. And in fact, a lot of the benefits are destroying our environments. And it's very hard to escape participating in those systems and those structures. So understand that we are in a moment of kind of frustration and just kind of there's also going to be a Venus square coming up on Thursday that's going to cause this. This week overall just is going to feel like things are not moving fast enough. Things are not shifting soon enough. Believe me, especially looking at my notes, especially once we get out of Sagittarius, things are going to start progressing, especially as the planets slowly, hit their direct points and we get out of this kind of retrograde mayhem that we've been in. But this week very much is a week of kind of being stuck, especially after what happened with that square with the nodes and the Gemini full moon last week. We're all really ready to shift and change, and we're kind of in a holding pattern. And this is very Saturnian, being forced to learn these lessons good. We're not allowed to move on until we have accepted. And if we do move on before accepting and dealing with them, these will come up in the next eclipse cycle, which is end of Aquarius season, beginning of Pisces season. But moving on to Thursday, we have Mercury trine Neptune, which I do think, thank goodness, is going to bring a bit of ease into this. Not maybe on the physical realm, but in creativity, in art, in music, in hobbies, in connection to the unseen. Great time, honestly, this week, great time for any kind of metaphysical reading. You're going to get a lot of really helpful information and very transcendent information. But it's mostly palliating the kind of intense unrest in the cosmos right now. And Mercury is trine Neptune at 29 degrees. So these are moments of last minute inspiration, of coming to terms with something right before it shifts into something else. Because very quickly after that, Mercury then goes into Sagittarius, where it is detriment. So we're out Scorpio, but now we're into a sign that we've been in previously because of the retrograde, where Mercury is not super thrilled with where it's at. Mercury is very salty in Sagittarius, very hyperbolic, uh, tends to maybe say things that it regrets later. Um, Great opportunity if you do need to say something though and you've been afraid to. This is time when you just take the mask off. There will be consequences, but there's also consequences if you don't. And on that day, we also have Venus square the nodes, the same degree as that full moon. So there's going to be a callback to that full moon. There are going to be things that come up that we were dealing with the full moon, whether they were wonderful things or difficult things, depending on your chart, and also depending on where you are in the journey of your life. When Venus is square the nodes, it's really asking us, what do you truly want? And what are you willing to do? And how are you willing to transform in order to get what you want? It's also a call upon our past lives and the dynamics that we have had from those connections and relationships. You might have someone pop back up that you didn't expect to. You might hear from someone who you've, at some point cut cords with. That's kind of the kind of the universe being like, knock, knock, were we finished? Just to confirm. So yeah, just be aware that that day is gonna feel pretty higgledy-piggledy. Um, Also, if you are in a relationship that is struggling, or if you are looking for a relationship, a romantic one, or even friendships, this is a good day with that square to be like, this is what I will not accept. And this is what I want. And this is what I'm willing to hold out for in order to get what I want. Making a commitment to the universe to accept nothing less than what is best for you. Um, this type of energy can bring on desperation, but let's let that desperation push us towards standing on business versus pushing us towards maybe giving up on some of our hopes and dreams and goals. You deserve to have what you desire, it just might take more time. Then on Saturday, Mercury is sextile Pluto, and this is also important to note that that Mercury trine is the last Mercury trine with Neptune. And so, yeah, just be aware. It's the last little farewell to the Pisces trines with those outer planets. We're never going to have those. Well, not never going to have those again. We're not going to have those for a while. Yeah, it's going to be a minute before we get to experience those. So it's a little goodbye to the big water trines. And especially my water risings, I will say this for you. This is a really big shifting point because you've been in an aspect to that for a long time. And if you have other water placements, that's that wrapping up. Anyways, Mercury sextile Pluto, it can really bring out secrets. These aren't necessarily like Mercury opposition Pluto secrets or Mercury square secrets, but people are more likely to tell you things when Mercury is sextile Pluto. Maybe there's family history you want to know, or you want to investigate something. This is a really good day to find out stuff that maybe has been hidden from you. This is also a time where if you have a loose grip on the outcome of a conversation and you really only want the truth, this is a great time to have that. And honestly, coming back with that Venus square the nodes, if you were having trouble with communication, if you're willing to accept the consequences of clear communication, that Saturday sextile Pluto is a great time to have a really deep, raw talk with someone because you will at least get the honest truth. And for some of you, I think that's really what you want. You don't need a good outcome, you just need an outcome. We also have the Sun trine Chiron. This is a day of tenderness and a day where the sun is pinging off of where we've been hurt and where we've been harmed. And it's another opportunity of this week to sit back and to recognize how far you have come when it comes to healing, but also recognize how far you haven't come and the places and the wounds that haven't shifted or changed over time. And I get a lot of pushback for this, but there are some wounds that are too deep, that will never fully heal. And that is the depth of that wound. And it is not a failing for it to not heal. Also, the whole idea of someone being perfectly whole and perfectly well is ableist. That's not how humans work. If we live long enough, all of us will be disabled. I'm already disabled on multiple levels. So yeah, this is a time to just be like, hey, wounds, How are we doing? Checking in on our trauma, maybe having a good cry or a good rage because it's in a fire sign, being mad about the ways in which people have treated you and make another commitment to yourself not to do that to anyone else. Because wouldn't it be a shame if the pain that you experienced and were put through then ended up hurting others? And it happens sometimes, but it doesn't need to happen all the time. And then our final Sunday, Mars square Neptune. And I promise, guys, we are slowly getting out of these squares, but we're going to have the Venus square, the Sun, and then let's do it in the right order. Sun square, Venus square, Mercury square, Mercury, Venus. Yeah, I think that's it. So we have 3 more of these squares left. However, this Mars square Neptune is another farewell. And this is an excellent time if you don't want to work with a full or new moon to cut cords with people, to let something go. Especially on a spiritual level, I find that Mars aspects with Neptune are really good for just cutting through the veil of seeing things spiritually and metaphysically that maybe we didn't want to see, of being honest with ourselves, of recognizing past life dynamics and dynamics with people that are just continuing to cycle. This is also a great time to kind of look at where you are artistically or spiritually and be like, hey, there's some stuff I don't have that I want. And to really commit to getting those things, and it will take time. A good example would be maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was like, I want more psychic access. And it took long, it took only like 2 years. But it took time for me to get that access, but I got it. After a lot of people said I wouldn't be able to. So, haha. um, I like being right sometimes, not all the time. Anyways, but this Mars square Neptune kind of forces us up against the wall between reality and what is not real, but what is unseen, and us having to kind of face the convergence of those two kind of systems. What is physical? What is spiritual? This is also a good time to be bold and to be brave with your creative output. Write the post, make the video of your art, share something with someone else. Um, Also, if you are an activist of any kind or believe in something and you haven't spoken up about it, now's the time to uncover these deep hidden things and to put them out where people can see them and experience them and draw hope and community from them. But yeah, it's a really spicy week. Lots of squares, lots of frustration. I will say, if you have done a lot of major work recently, it might be frustrating, but it's just going to be like more of the same. If you have been putting off doing some work and that full moon has been triggering you, this is going to be the universe kind of putting the pressure on to be like, hey, we haven't done the thing we have to do yet. If there is something, a relationship, a job, or something that you keep holding on to that isn't really working out on like a deep level, maybe this is the week to at least allow yourself to consider that maybe this is not quite the right path for you. And there is no shame in changing the path of shifting, of moving away from something that is not meant for you. Most of the paths I have taken in life have been paths just to get me to the next step before the universe takes me on a different path. And that didn't negate the value of any of the things that I was observing or hoping for, even though it was hard. I recognize that they all got me to where I needed to be in order to experience the next wonderful thing. Even if it hurt along the way. Anyways, my loves, that is the astrology for this week. It is tense and triggering, but I think if we can be brave enough to allow ourselves to be triggered and to see the truth in what is coming forward and to be compassionate with ourselves, there's a lot we can learn this week. I would encourage you not to try to push anything through in a progressive way, but sit with all of these squares. Especially once things go into Capricorn and we're no longer having aspects with Pluto. And we have like the sextiles to our bestie Saturn and things like that. Is it a sextile or is it a square? What am I saying? My poor little brain just died. Why can't I figure it out? Give me a second. Let me do the astrology in my head. Yeah, Aquarius, Pisces. I am right. It is sextiles. I knew that. Anyways, getting into those sextiles with Saturn and Neptune, we're going to get a lot of more productive help. A little bit of respite before we go through Aquarius and have to hit all the Pluto oppositions. But it is going to be, I think, a moment where we get a bit of relief and release, especially in the early Capricorn season. So hang on to that. We're getting there. Anyways, my loves, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. You can always ask me any questions below in the comments. I will see you later.